Welcome to the MAM journals and the 2023 year-end review. If you're watching this just after it's been launched, then I hope you had a nice Christmas. If you're watching it later, I hope you enjoy the review anyway. What I'm going to be doing today is talking through the videos that we made during the course of 23, talking about some of the ones that we liked and we enjoyed making, and of course, most importantly, the ones that you appeared to enjoy watching. As well as that, every year I'm a keen follower of motorcycle sport, so I'll be doing a section on this year's championships and talking about my views on that. We're then going to talk about some of the adventures I've had during the course of this year and ones that were particular highlights for me. And finally, we'll be talking about the plans for the channel in 2024. So let's start with the videos. We've made 26 videos this year and we've had a lot of fun doing it, and it appears that you've enjoyed watching them. At the last review, I pointed out that between February 21 and the end of last year, I had 500,000 views, which I found staggering. It's not huge in terms of channel terms, but certainly it's significantly more than I thought. This year, I've been particularly delighted that so many of you have been kind enough to watch, and we've actually had 800,000 views this year on its own, so we're running at just under 1.3 million views. One of the challenges that I have in terms of coming to the what was the best of 23 is, of course, how do you define best? Is it the one that got the most likes? Is it the one that got the most views? Or, somewhat selfishly, is it the one that we actually enjoyed making the most? So I think for the pure criteria, we'll probably we'll use the how many views it's had, as at least it's indicative of how popular or otherwise a video is. My personal experience is actually the ones that are at the very top of the charts aren't necessarily the ones we enjoyed making the most. I really enjoyed making the video on the BMW R18. I thought that the photography was fantastic and really captured the spirit of the bike, and it was a very unusual bike. I mean, manufacturers don't really make bikes like that anymore, where the market must be small. It'd be very difficult to see them making a return on that particular model, but they built something very special to celebrate their 100th anniversary. 8,500 of you have been kind enough to watch it so far, but if you haven't watched it, have a look. It may not be your sort of bike, but I think it captured quite an unusual bike in an unusual market. Right, so let's actually start the charts countdown, and we'll start at number 10 with this bike. At number 10 was actually a comparison video where I compared this bike, the Kawasaki ZRX, with my Z900 RS. And as a couple of people pointed out, I am of course comparing chalk and cheese, and it was slightly tongue-in-cheek. But I enjoyed doing it, and I enjoyed actually incorporating some footage from a meeting that I went to for the ZRX and speaking to a fellow owner. I thought it captured some of the spirit of what I'm trying to do on the channel. This particular video went quite well. There was about 23,000 people watching it. At number 9 was actually a video comparing the ZRX 1200 with the 1100. And that got slightly nearer to 30,000 views. Moving on to number 8, I've been pleasantly surprised by how many of you appear to have enjoyed what I call modern classics, when I go back in time and review friends' bikes, if they're kind enough to lend me, from the 70s and 80s. Number 8 was a Honda 404, which a friend had kindly lent me, and that got high 20s of thousands in terms of views. Number 7, a film I made comparatively recently at the end of the summer, was a video on the iconic Suzuki Kettle, the 750 GT. And it's clear that a number of you really did enjoy that, and I was lucky enough to have access to such a beautiful, well-maintained example. That had over 30,000 views. Number 6 was actually our trip to Iconic's auctions at the NEC, when I reviewed mostly 70s and 80s bikes. And although it's only been released for a couple of months at most, you definitely did appear to enjoy that one, as that's got well over 30,000 views, which takes us to the countdown for the top 5. Right, now as we begin the final countdown, and Stuart, please do not put Europe's final countdown song in at this point. It's this bike here, the V-Strom 650, and 36,000 of you have been kind enough to watch it. This is actually a bike, I made the video and I called it the perfect winter bike, a phrase I instantly regretted, to be honest, but it's not really a good thing to change titles sort of once you've launched for reasons I won't bore you with. But what I actually meant to say was it's a bike that I enjoy riding in winter conditions, because with 70 brake horsepower, a little bit of traction control, you end up sort of saying to yourself, well, who could possibly ever need more than 70 brake horsepower as you're riding around on greasy, wet roads? But of course, we all know that lasts about to the spring when the weather's dry and it gets warm and you run off to get on something that's got 200 brake horsepower. But these are actually really capable bikes, and I'm not surprised that both the video was popular and indeed they are popular out there in the marketplace, because they're underrated. At number 4 and at number 3 in the charts are 2 videos that I made on this particular bike during the course of the year. The first one was when I explored the virtues and the benefits of a low chassis model, which this is, and that appeared to be quite popular because 48,000 people watched it. And I then, having owned the bike for a while and done 1,000 miles on it, I did a 1,000-mile review, and another 45,000, or possibly the same people, were kind enough to watch that as well. I enjoyed making the videos and I enjoyed getting to grips with the bike, because it's quite an unusual bike really, and although very popular, when I talk about the highlights of the year, I'll perhaps explore a bit further how I found this bike now that I've actually done 6,500 miles on it during the course mostly of this year. At number 2 in the charts is the review that I made early in the year on my new Z900 RS SE. It's a bike I really like, and clearly some of you, well, many of you, 55,000 of you actually enjoyed watching the video on my first impressions on this bike. It's a great bike and I'm looking forward to riding it some more next year. At number 1 in the charts, and it was surprising to me, although if I thought about it, it probably shouldn't have been, was actually a Royal Enfield. 83,000 people were kind enough to watch my video on the Royal Enfield Super Meteor, which I tested earlier in the year. I shouldn't have been surprised really, because they're a really growing and dynamic brand, and they made over 800,000 bikes last year, and they have a huge following in their home market, which is of course India. Interestingly enough, you can see your statistics of who's viewing and from what geography, and you won't be surprised to hear that 25% of those 83,000 were in India. Right, motorsport review. As I said in the introduction, I am a keen follower of motorsport, and I follow World Superbikes, Moto GP, British Superbikes, and I watch the Isle of Man. Coming back to World Superbikes, appropriate. This is a homologation bike from the 2002 series, all those years ago. World Superbikes I've enjoyed. It has been a bit of a Ducati fest, which is a bit of a theme this year, and Bautista was really on stunning form on a bike that clearly suits his style and stature. There have been some people complaining that there should be weight penalties brought in, but I think whoever wins these championships, there's always somebody who says it's not fair, but he has ridden exceptionally well, and he's got more mental resilience than certainly he's had in previous competitions and times, as he was finally honing his skills. I think he was the deserved victor. I'm looking forward to next year because there has been some interesting changes gone out, and I think it will make 2024 a really interesting series in that Toprak, who is an extraordinarily talented rider, the last of the last minute breakers, is actually moving to BMW. I know BMW are throwing everything bar the kitchen sink at winning that championship. They've won a lot of championships with the RR, but normally in sort of stock style form racing, they've never won World Superbikes. So they've clearly decided they're going to get Toprak and they're going to throw everything at it. Other surprising thing for me is that Jonathan Rea, who's had so much success on the Kawasaki, has decided that a change is as good as the rest, and he's taken Toprak's seat in Yamaha. So I think we're going to see some interesting, exciting racing next year. For me, Moto GP is the pinnacle of motor racing on two wheels, and we've had a fantastic season. It was, as I'd anticipated, yet again a bit of a Ducati fest, and what was interesting wasn't that it was a Ducati, it was that how many of the Ducatis were actually appearing on the podiums. And not just this year's bike, but also last year's bike as well. Fantastic finale between Bagnaia and Jorge Martin, who were really hammer and tongs. And it went to the final race, so very competitive, very exciting racing. And I'm sure it'll be equally close next year. What was interesting is although Ducati vanished off into the distance with the constructors' title with 700 points, the people in second and third were not who we might have expected to see. Sort of, well, obviously it'd be Yamaha and Honda, but it wasn't. It was KTM and Aprilia. And it's easy to think, sometimes I was reading various sort of sports coverage on it, they were saying, well, the Hondas are just so far off the pace and the bike's not very good. But some of the qualifying times between the first guys and the last guys was less than a second. So although it certainly appears on race day and on the track they vanish off into the distance, they're clearly not that far off actually getting those bikes sorted. It'd be interesting to see, of course, what Marquez, who's decided that he needs a change from Honda and he needs to get on a Ducati, see how he gets on with that. He was pretty fast in testing within 5 laps, so I'm quite excited about that race series next year. British Superbikes was also dominated by Ducati, and I think appropriately by actually a team run by, sadly, past Paul Bird. They had 2 riders, Tommy Bridewell and Glenn Irving, both of which are emotional and volatile. So it was a pretty fiery championship, literally going down to the last race. And I'm glad for Tommy that he won it. He's been in the series a long time, and it's great to see all that talent finally coming to fruition. Interestingly enough, things clearly weren't entirely happy in the camp, as he's actually taken his number 1 plate to Honda for next year. So it's only an opinion, but I think they might struggle a bit against the strength of the Ducatis. Now, people, if you going through this review, World Superbikes, Moto GP, British Superbikes, all won by Ducati, and it's easy to think, wow, we need to change the regulations, we need to do various things to sort of even it out again. But it was only a couple of years ago when it was actually the Yamaha Fest when they won all 3 championships. These things go in cycles, and as soon as one particular team or manufacturer thinks they've got the edge, someone else comes up with something that takes it to them. So again, I'm looking forward to that championship. The other series that I mentioned is, of course, the Isle of Man, a historic classical racing through streets at remarkable speeds. This bike obviously has a history with that. It's a homologation bike and very loosely based on the bike that Joey Dunlop won his last TT all those years ago. But this year's racing was particularly exciting. Peter Hickman did a fantastic job on the BMWs, and there were some particularly good showings from Michael Dunlop and Dean Harrison. So again, I think that next year will be a very exciting series, and Honda are clearly investing in riders and equipment to take that challenge to the island. It'd be great to watch. And for me, watching the Isle of Man, there was a support series called No Room for Error, which gave a fantastic insight into the mentality and the approach of these riders as they hurtle along these streets. They are remarkably brave and capable people, whilst remaining down to earth. They're a different breed, and it's a pleasure to be able to get that insight and to watch them race. Of course, most motorcycle racers, and we often talk about them, they're only sort of young, they're 21, 22 as they work their way through Moto 3 and Moto 2. Of course, many of them have been riding for the best part of 15 years. So they may be young, but they're certainly not lacking in experience. And most motorcyclists and racers, they start on mini bikes. And I had the pleasure of going to watch a friend's daughter race in the Fab series, which is a UK-based series where they race the mini bikes and the size that's slightly bigger than that. And I thoroughly enjoyed the day. It's a very expensive sport for parents supporting their youngsters through it. And actually for 2024, I've decided to help Daisy Polden a little bit in her racing efforts next year when she graduates to the bigger class bikes. It is quite remarkable to see how capable and how fast they are at such a young age. Back in the real world, and coming on to some of the things I've enjoyed this year, I've actually done, as I did in previous years, I actually did some track days, and I am the last to suggest that I'm any good at it, but I'm definitely enjoying it. And I think one of the reasons I'm enjoying it is because although I did a little bit of semi-competitive enduro as a younger man, I've never really enjoyed going back to it because I've always realised that however hard I try, I'm never actually going to be as fast as I was in my 20s. Whilst track days, I'm actually improving. So I've graduated from being completely useless to just not very good, but I'm having a lot of fun doing it. Did 4 days in total, as I've just mentioned. I did 3 days with the Yamaha Experience, and they're a great team and really look after you very well. On the R6, where I did 2 days at Donington and 1 day at Silverstone. And then, as I sort of threatened to do last time we did a review, I actually took this bike, my Suzuki Gixxer 750, to Silverstone, and as my last track day of the year. I was expecting to be faster than the R6 because this bike is faster than an R6, but in fairness, we hadn't quite got it set up right, and it tucked on me twice at the front, so what little enthusiasm I had was a little bit dampened by that, but we still managed to crack on and have a good day and cook the rear tyre. It's interesting, now that I'm buying my own tyres, I'm more aware of the wear. So I suspect I'm probably going to get one more track day out of this year before they go too brittle. And I booked a day at Brands Hatch in April, so I'm really looking forward to doing that. I've just got it on the ramp, I'm just tidying up a few things so I can push it into the corner ready for when that comes around. I've actually also booked another track day with the Yamaha Experience team where I'm going to be trying the I have to get this right, GSR, the 900, the new one with the Marlborough colours. They let me know they had one going on the fleet and would I like to come and have a day with it, and I thought that sounds like too good an opportunity to miss. And that is going to be in Donington in April. I'm hoping that we can persuade them to fit some camera mounts on, and if Stuart's available, then we'll film a review of the bike in the normal way, and then we'll try and do the GoPro with me wobbling around in the slow group, which will prove to you that I am as slow as I'm suggesting that I am. So I've had great fun riding track bikes this year. Other parts of my motorcycling adventures this year have well, in total, I've done 17,750 odd miles, so I've definitely got some miles in. Had good fun on this bike, and we took it around the NC 500, 2 up on this little seat here, and people said, oh, you can't do that, but actually it was fine. We really enjoyed it. The bike performed really nicely. It's got great navigation system, great luggage capacity when you sort of load it all up, and we had great fun. It was obviously a combination. We went in May, so we had bright sunshine and biblical rain. So it's been through the full sort of tests. As I touched on earlier, I've done 6,500 miles on here, and on this bike, and it's an interesting bike because it rides differently from any of the other bikes that I've got. And I struggled a bit until I put the reason I've done 6,500 miles on is about halfway through the summer I thought I just need to spend some time on that bike and learn how to ride it the way that it wants to be ridden, because it's, even in dynamic, it feels slightly sloppy when you're actually riding it in terms of handling, but I think I'm getting there now. I understand which gear, what your braking points are, because every bike's slightly different, and it's always been easy to ride, but when I occasionally try to make a little bit of progress, it's about picking your lines right. You can brake extraordinarily late on one of these because they've got this telelever system at the front, so it doesn't dive. So sort of gradually tuning into it. Nice bike, enjoying it. Really looking forward to trying the new 1300 when it comes out, and in particular the gearbox. Other adventures, I've done 7,000 miles in total on this Suzuki GT now. Done 3,000 miles this year. We went down in March. We picked a good excuse. I went down for the Moto GP opening round down there. Lovely trip. We were blessed with extraordinarily good weather, and the bike was absolutely faultless. I've also taken this on a solo trip to Scotland to see another sort of horsepower with 4 legs that eats you out of house and home. But it was great fun, and I'm still very fond of this bike. It's such a versatile and flexible bike in terms of what it's capable of doing. It's, you know, that nice sort of schizophrenic mix between leisurely comfort and complete sports bike. So brilliant bike, still love it. Looking forward to trying the upright version of it, which is the GX. And apparently I'm going to be trying it early in the new year. So that'll be fun. I've been out on Ducati's maps. At the moment it looks like a Ducati elephant sort of graveyard, and just various things been done on. The forks on the front got slightly damaged, so seals had gone, and it just needs new inner tube put on it. It's got some nicks on that inner front fork tube, so just getting a pair of those put on. And this is just refurbishment rather than any problem with it. I've taken out the rear shock absorber just because it was just showing its age a little bit, and the yellow on the spring had become a bit chipped and rusty. So it's a nice bike. It's a collector's bike, to be honest, with it being the R version. And I thought, well, why not just get it rebuilt, refurbished? So they're fine. 2 new bikes this year. This one arrived in January, which we talked about earlier, and as I say, I'm very pleased with that. I think the Brembo brakes and the Öhlins rear shock unit has improved the bike, and I enjoyed my Jaffa. I'm enjoying this one even more. These are very popular, actually. The Jaffa used to be the best selling. I wouldn't be surprised if this new yellow ball isn't the latest one that sort of tops the charts. Very popular bike, and a nice group of people that follow them, and I'm in a couple of the forums, and it's good fun. My other new bike for the year was this bike, belying my... these are the bikes that prove 2 lies. One, I'm not going to buy any more bikes, and secondly, 70 brake horsepower is enough. So I treated myself to this, which is a weapon. And it's hilarious. I couldn't capture it really on the video, but if you haven't watched it, it'll be in the links somewhere in the description box below. But what a great bike. I wouldn't want to go very far on it, although you can actually do a sort of 150 mile loop, and you still got most of your fillings and probably won't need a chiropractor. But it's been great fun, and yeah, I think people rightly say, well, why on earth do you need, at your age, a 208 brake horsepower? And the answer is, of course, I don't. But I have no intention of going quietly into the night. So whilst they make them, and I can ride them, nearly, I'll be buying them. Brilliant bikes. So having talked about last year, 2023. What are the plans for the future? Well, I have really had a great time making the videos, and I hope that that's come across. I enjoy my motorcycling, and I enjoy talking about motorcycles and making videos that you appear to enjoy as well. Now, the original premise when we first started the channel is I wanted it to feel like it was two motorcycling friends talking about bikes, with the absence of being one of them is mute, so, and answering some of the theoretical questions that they may ask, because every time we all go to a cafe, we end up talking about, well, how fast is it, how heavy is it, how powerful, what does it handle like, what are the lights like, all the things I try and cover in the individual videos that I do. I go through quite a lot of specifications with that, and I'm very conscious that some of the videos might be longer than some of you want, but what I would sort of advocate really, and the reason why I put the detail in there is if anybody's actually thinking about buying that bike, I think it's nice to have an independent view of an interpretation of the specifications. But if you're just watching it because you're quite interested in bikes, a tip to you is we always do those reviews in standard format, i.e. we do an introduction, we do specifications, we go for a ride, and then I come back and make some sort of conclusions. Well, if we put chapter headings on it for you, you may well be able to just miss out the specifications if you're not particularly interested in that level of detail, and just go straight to the riding into the conclusions. So hopefully you find that useful. In terms of what we're going to cover, well, the plan is to make about 26 videos next year, looking at the diary. That feels about the right volume for me, where I'm still enjoying it. It's enough to get into a rhythm and get organised and enjoy various bikes and test the bikes that become available to me, but not so much that it feels like a job or a chore. It takes about 5 or 6 days to make a half-an-hour video, which is a fairly frightening prospect when you add it up. And I worked out a long time ago that the best way to make a small fortune with YouTube is to start off with a large one. So I'm not particularly commercially driven. I'm doing it because it's a passion and it's a hobby, and any income that I get through the advertisements which you're bombarded with, and I have no control over it, by the way, either the content or nor the frequency. And any income that I receive from it is just to make my hobby a little bit more cost effective. The bikes that we cover are probably we're going to do similar themes really. It'll be something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue, with the blue of course being Suzuki. And I'd like to mix and match it a bit, because it's clear to me that some of you really do enjoy the trips down memory lane, and indeed I do, and they are good fun. But whilst I enjoy the past, I don't want to live in it, and I'm still excited by the new technology as it comes out. As you can see, so excited that I actually do silly things like buy bikes, which are far faster than I'm capable of riding. But that is part of the joy of it. But I'd also like to do, going back to that community spirit, I'd like to do a few trips when I go out, and as I do in my normal riding, go out and meet fellow riders in groups with associated bikes and talk to them about how they're getting on with their bikes. So there'll be a few opportunities to do that with both the ZRX Club and hopefully the Z900 Club. And one of the places I regularly visit is the Classic Motor Hub. And we'll put that on a bigger picture so that you can see it. And they are in near Bybury, and that's about 40 miles away from me. And they actually do ride-in days when you can take the bike, and hundreds of bikes turn up. It's the middle of nowhere, but some really interesting bikes. There's a few of those scheduled, and I plan to take a good excuse to get my homologation bikes out, the Honda and the Ducati 996R, to take them for a ride out. And there's 3 scheduled in the year. There's May the 5th, July the 17th, which is an evening event, and then there's a later one on September the 1st. So I plan to attend those, and I'll probably do a bit of filming one or maybe 2 of those as well as part of the whole video program. So we'll be covering some old classic bikes, some bike meetings, and the new bikes as they become available to me. So I'm already quite excited about doing that. As I say, it is good fun, and clearly some of you have been kind enough to watch and comment, and and enjoy the videos that I've made. So thank you very much indeed for your support. It is really appreciated. I guess I need to close by wishing you all the very best for next year, for 2024. And as always, ride safe, stay well.